In this module, we're going to continue discussing new fiduciary guidelines and how they impact your duty to act in the best interest of participants, particularly with regard to evaluating investments. The first important aspect of a fiduciary duty is loyalty to plan participants. The fiduciary responsibility is always act in the best interest of the plan participants and beneficiaries. This means you cannot subordinate the interest of participants to unrelated objectives. In other words, the participants' best interest must always come first. No exceptions. Fiduciaries are barred from sacrificing return or taking additional risk to promote non-pecuniary goals, objectives not related to the financial performance of the investments. So let's break this down a little further. When evaluating investments or making investment decisions, fiduciaries must focus solely on pecuniary factors, which are those factors that are expected to have a material effect on the risk and/or return of the investment. Here's what this entails. 1, material impact on risk and return. Investment should be evaluated based on factors expected to materially affect the risk and/or return. This means you need to assess potential investments on their financial merits and how they align with the plan's goals. 2, appropriate investment horizons. The evaluation must be based on investment horizons that are consistent with the plan's objectives and funding policy. In other words, the timeline for expected return should fit the overall financial goals of the plan. 3, weight given to each factor. The weight or importance given to each factor should reflect a prudent assessment of its impact on the investment's risk and return. This ensures that your decision is not just thorough, but also well-reasoned. 4, consider reasonably available alternatives. Fiduciaries should consider alternatives when evaluating investments. However, you do not need to scour the entire marketplace or look at an infinite number of investments. What's expected is that you look at a reasonable range of options that meets the plan's investment goals. Following this process helps fiduciaries meet their prudence and loyalty responsibilities. Using non-pecuniary factors. Now that there may be times when, after evaluating all pecuniary factors, the fiduciary is unable to distinguish between 2 or more investment options. In such cases, you are allowed to use non-pecuniary factors as the deciding element. However, there are some specific requirements for doing so. Documenting the decision. You must clearly document why pecuniary factors were not enough to make a decision. This is crucial for ensuring transparency in your decision-making process. Comparing investments. You must also document how the selected investment compares to other available options in terms of portfolio construction and diversification. Does this investment contribute to a well-diversified portfolio? Liquidity and cash flow requirements. How does the investment align with the plan's cash flow needs? Projected return and funding objectives. Does the projected return fit the plan's long-term funding goals? Ensuring non-pecuniary factors align with participants' interest. Finally, when a non-pecuniary factors are used, you must demonstrate that the chosen factors are consistent with the financial interests of the participants and their retirement income goals. So takeaway here would be always act in the best interest of plan participants, never put unrelated objectives ahead of their financial well-being, focus on pecuniary factors when evaluating investments, consider the material effect of risk and return. If non-pecuniary factors are used, ensure that decisions are well documented and align with the participants' financial goals. By adhering to these guidelines, fiduciaries can better ensure compliance with their responsibilities and provide the best outcomes for plan participants. As a fiduciary, you are not prohibited from considering or including an investment as a designated investment alternative or DIA simply because it supports a non-pecuniary goal. However, this is allowed only if certain conditions are met. So let's break down these conditions. Number 1, broad range of investment selections. The plan must allow participants a broad range of investment options. This ensures that they can diversify and meet their retirement objectives, regardless of whether some investments have pecuniary considerations. Meets the duty of loyalty. The investment must continue to meet the fiduciary's duty of loyalty. This means that it should never prioritize non-pecuniary interest over the best interest of plan participants. Based solely on pecuniary factors. The decision to include this investment must be made solely on pecuniary factors, factors that materially impact the financial performance of the investment. Limitations on QDIA investments. Importantly, if the investment is tended to be a qualified default investment alternative, or QDIA, it cannot be added or retained if its investment objectives, goals, or principal strategies explicitly include non-pecuniary factors. Fiduciaries must be cautious here, as QDIAs are a crucial part of many retirement plans, and these must focus strictly on financial returns for participants. These guidelines emphasize that while non-pecuniary factors like environmental, social, and governance (ESG) concerns may influence certain investments, financial performance must remain the priority. The preamble on the ESG investing concerns. Now let's address some important considerations around ESG investing under ERISA, as this has raised concerns for fiduciaries. The Department of Labor, the DOL, has been vocal in stating that the ESG investing raises heightened concerns under ERISA. This concern is rooted in ERISA's fundamental goal, ensuring that the plan investments are managed with a singular focus on maximizing the funds available to pay benefits to participants. This principle was solidified in the Donovan versus Beerworth case, where the court reaffirmed that the pension plans are bound to statute to manage funds with an eye single to maximizing financial returns. Key takeaways from this case and guidance include the duty of prudence prevents a fiduciary from selecting an investment that is financially less beneficial than other reasonably available alternatives. The final rule did not change the core fiduciary requirements regarding the appropriate consideration of investments. The fiduciary duty to evaluate investments based on risk and return remains paramount. Consideration of ESG factors. However, the DOL has acknowledged that there are instances where ESG factors may present an economic business risk or opportunity that should be considered as a material economic factor. In such cases, corporate officers, directors, and qualified investment professionals may appropriately treat ESG factors as part of the risk-return analysis, as long as these factors are evaluated with generally accepted investment theories. That said, the DOL reiterates that ESG investing raises heightened concerns under ERISA. So while ESG factors can sometimes be economically relevant, fiduciaries must approach them cautiously and always prioritize financial returns. Finally, a critical update on the Biden administration's stance as ESG-related rules. While the Biden administration has publicly stated that it will not enforce the prior administration's ESG rules, it's important to understand that not enforcing these rules is not the same as eliminating them. The rule is still in place, which means fiduciaries should continue to comply with until future changes are made or clarified. The takeaways here are pecuniary factors must always take precedence when evaluating selecting investments. You can consider non-pecuniary goals only if you meet strict conditions and document your process, especially in cases where pecuniary factors alone do not differentiate between investment options. ESG investing can be considered when it presents material economic risks or opportunities, but fiduciaries must always be cautious and put participants' financial interests first. Stay informed about changes in regulatory enforcement to ensure ongoing compliance with ERISA standards. The final rule has now eliminated all references to ESG terminology, making it clear that these rules are now broadly applicable to all investment decisions. This goes beyond ESG and extends to any non-pecuniary directed investment, which could include religious-based funds. Some concerns have been raised about whether this violates the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. However, the Department of Labor has stated that they are confident that any RFRA concerns can be reviewed and resolved on an individual basis. This means fiduciaries can still follow the rule without conflicting with religious freedom laws, but careful consideration may be required. In regards to the brand name discussion, a topic has been gained attention is the role of a fund manager's brand or reputation. If a fiduciary concludes that the brand or reputation of a fund manager has a material impact on the risk or return of the investment, it may be considered a pecuniary factor. However, increased plan contributions or similar considerations, while important, are still seen as non-economic factors. These non-economic factors could be taken into account if a fiduciary is permitted to make a decision based on non-pecuniary factors, but they must tread carefully. In regards to due diligence, when considering investment alternatives for individual account plans, it's essential that fiduciaries conduct proper due diligence. This includes carefully reviewing the prospectus or other disclosures for any references to ESG investment policies or approaches. Fiduciaries need to be particularly cautious when disclosures or marketing materials make reference to non-pecuniary factors, as these may influence the fund's objectives, goals, or principal strategies. Remaining compliant with ERISA means ensuring that the pecuniary factors always take precedence, especially with dealing with collateral benefits or non-economic considerations. As a conclusion, as fiduciaries, your responsibilities extend beyond just selecting investments. You must also ensure that decisions are made in the best interest of participants while adhering to the evolving regulatory framework. Understanding the nuances of ESG, non-pecuniary factors, and due diligence is critical in safeguarding both plan participants and your own financial or fiduciary responsibilities. QDIA special treatment. Let's start by discussing the QDIAs. These warrant special treatment because participants do not make active investment elections. The plan automatically enrolls them into a QDIA. It's important to note that if a prospectus or disclosure states that the fund was constructed using ESG factors or evaluates non-pecuniary factors as part of its structure, the final rule prohibits the use of that fund as a QDIA. This is to ensure the participants' interests are prioritized through financial outcomes without sacrificing returns for other non-pecuniary objectives. And now for something completely unexpected. Interestingly, the final rule leaves some room for non-traditional considerations when they align with the interest of the participants. For example, responding to a participant demand for increasing retirement savings or investing in projects that create jobs for current or future plan participants may be consistent with the interest of the participants and the beneficiaries in terms of retirement income or financial benefits under the plan. Timing of the final rule. Let's talk about timing. The final rule becomes effective 60 days after the publication in the Federal Register. All investments and actions taken after that date must comply with the rule. This applies prospectively, meaning the rule only affects investments made or actions taken after the effective date. So planned fiduciaries do not need to divest from existing investments or stop ongoing investment courses of action just because they were originally selected for non-pecuniary factors that are now prohibited by the rule. However, fiduciaries should be cautious. Deciding to retain any investment is still considered an investment action, meaning ongoing monitoring and adherence to the new rules are critical. Finally, plans have an extended compliance date for QDIAs. Fiduciaries had until April 30th of 2022 to make any necessary changes to their QDIAs to ensure compliance with the final rules. This gives fiduciaries some additional time to carefully review and adjust their default investments as needed.